Myanmar's Spring Revolution and the Indo-Pacific. Why those dying in Myanmar are also fighting for global peace? What kind of world are we defending? We live in a time when the greatest threat to global peace is not chaos, but the normalization of authoritarian power. Across the world, rules are being tested, institutions are being weakened, and force is being used where law once stood. Nowhere is the struggle more visible than in the Indo-Pacific region. And yet, one of the most important front lines of this struggle is still widely misunderstood. That front line is Myanmar. Myanmar is not just a domestic crisis. Myanmar is often described as a complex internal conflict or a tragic civil war. That description is incomplete and dangerously misleading. Dangerously misleading. Myanmar today is not only facing a humanitarian catastrophe, it is facing a geopolitical transformation with direct consequences for regional and global security. What happens in Myanmar will shape the future of the Indo-Pacific and the credibility of the rules-based international order. Why the Indo-Pacific matters? The Indo-Pacific is not an abstract strategic concept. It is where over 30% of global maritime trade flows, energy lifetimes connect continents, regional balance prevents global conflict. At the center of this region lies the South China Sea, a vital artery of global commerce and security. When cohesion replaces law in these waters, the damage does not remain regional. It becomes global. Authoritarian expansion does not stop at the sea. Authoritarian power does not expand only through naval fleets or territorial claims. It expands through strategic corridors, complaints regimes, weakened states, and silence from international community. This is where Myanmar becomes critical. Myanmar's strategic position. Myanmar provides something no map of the South China Sea can show: a land bridge to the Indian Ocean. Through ports, pipelines, and infrastructure corridors, Myanmar offers authoritarian powers a way to bypass strategic choke points and reduce pressure as well in the Indo-Pacific. In simple terms, If pressure increases in the South China Sea, control over Myanmar provides an alternative outlet. This makes Myanmar a strategic prize, not because of its people, but because of its geography. A coup and the strategic opportunity. After the 2021 military coup, Myanmar's junta becomes internationally isolated. This isolation created a vacuum, and authoritarian powers stepped in. The relationship that followed was not about development or stability. It was transitional. Diplomatic protection in exchange for strategic access. Political survival in exchange for alignment. Silence in exchange for compliance. Myanmar's people were never consulted. Their lives were never valued. Enter the Spring Revolution. Against this backdrop, Myanmar's Spring Revolution emerged. Teachers, students, workers, farmers, artists, and young people who had never held a weapon before rose up against military rule. They did not rise up because they wanted war. They rose up because every peaceful pub and being closed. And many of them are now paying with their lives. Why their sacrifice matter to the world. Those dying in Myanmar's Spring Revolution are not fighting only for their own freedom. They are fighting against the entrenchment of authoritarian corridors, the silent restructuring of regional power, the erosion of international norms. Every community that resists forced militarization. Every young person who refused to submit to dictatorship, and every life lost in this struggle. This is part of a broader defense of global stability. This is not symbolism. It is strategy. The human cost of global peace. Myanmar's resistant fighters do not have aircraft carriers. They do not have veto power at the United Nations. They do not have sanctions authority or international grantees. What they have is their bodies, their communities, and their belief that the world should not be ruled by force. They are paying a price that the international system has delayed confronting. They are defending regional balance without foreign bases. They are defending freedom of navigation without firing a naval shot. They are defending international law without a seat at the table. They fight and die. so that others may debate policy in safety. The cost of silence. When the international community treats Myanmar as an internal problem, best managed quietly, authoritarian actors interpret that silence is permission. Silence does not preserve neutrality. It shapes the course of peace into the most vulnerable. It allows repression to become precedent. A test case of the world. Myanmar is a test. If military rule is normalized in Myanmar, authoritarian expansion is rewarded. If democratic resistance is abandoned, rules-based order becomes optional. If Myanmar is allowed to fall permanently into authoritarian dependency, the Indo-Pacific strategic architecture is weakened without a single shot fired at sea. But if Myanmar's people succeed, they strengthen regional balance. They close strategic loopholes. They reaffirm that sovereignty belongs to the people, not generals. What the international community must understand: supporting Myanmar's Spring Revolution is not charity. It is not interference. It is a strategic responsibility. The people of Myanmar are not asking the world to fight their war. They are asking the world not to enable its consequences. The truth we must say clearly. Let us say this plainly: those who are giving their lives in Myanmar's Spring Revolution are not dying for Myanmar alone. They are fighting on the front lines of the Indo-Pacific. And by doing so, they are defending the possibility of global peace. The question before the international community is not whether Myanmar matters. The question is whether the world is willing to recognize who is already paying the price for the future we claim to defend. History will remember not only those who seized power by force, but those who chose silence and those who chose solidarity. Thank you.